Chapter 15, Lunch with Sebastian, from JE2US-A Novel. The first snow of the season was piling up outside. Sebastian sat in an oversized chair carved from Mozambique ebony. He set his chalice on the table and leaned back, looking at the Gothic-style fireplace that was keeping him warm. Sneering gargoyles lined the top ledge of a hearth made from Barragato marble. The sides had several columns of open Gothic spires, making it look like the whole structure was firmly anchored in the 15th century. His hand draped over the side of his chair and stroked the head of a snoozing Marduk. He was waiting for Jesus. The invitation had gone out 2 weeks prior for Jesus to join him for lunch at the Ineffable Club, the exclusive retreat for Baal priests that inhabited a full city block of downtown Minneapolis. Sebastian had been pleasantly surprised when Jesus had sent word back that he would accept the invitation. When Jesus had disappeared for 5 weeks, Sebastian thought he might have been rid of this Jesus and the curious circus that surrounded him. But with his return last week, the three-ringed frenzy was once again the greatest show in town. Sebastian had never ascribed to the theory, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. He preferred making disagreeable nuisances vanish without a trace. But with Jesus' popularity heading in the wrong direction, he figured it might be time to sidle up to Jesus, to look for soft spots, vulnerabilities. Jesus arrived 2 minutes late. He was ushered in by a woman in a full-length red evening gown. She pulled his chair out for him, then bent down to pet the Doberman before she retreated. Sorry I'm late, Sebastian. The Messiah begins with an apology. How ironic, observed Sebastian. Then, I appreciate you joining me today. I've been hoping to get to know you better. Strange, responded Jesus. I feel like I know you quite thoroughly. How so? Asked Sebastian. We were interrupted by our server, a young boy, 10 or 11, wearing a full-length black robe with a small ruby necklace. He refilled Sebastian's chalice with a deep burgundy wine, then looked to Jesus for a drink order. I'll have water, please, said Jesus. The boy put his hands together and bowed deeply to Sebastian, then to Jesus. As he was turning to leave, Jesus noticed the slave number on the boy's hand. He gently reached out and took the boy's hand, then held his own hand out to reveal his number. The boy almost smiled, but checked it, then hurried away. How's your painting going, Sebastian? Asked Jesus, changing the subject. As you well know, Jesus, there is always more to learn. Then nodding toward the painting above the hearth. That's one of my more recent ones. What's it called? Asked Jesus, looking at the portrait of a disfigured girl with excessively large, protruding eyes and pale white skin, almost bluish, as if she were dead. I call it Retribution. They both admired it for a while. You're a very gifted painter, Sebastian. Sebastian, trying to hide the fact that he was deeply flattered, responded, As are you, Jesus. The painting you gave me, it's quite extraordinary. Ah, Maddie, she's a masterpiece, truly one of my greatest creations. Don't you just love her? We're talking about the painting, right? Clarified Sebastian. Sorry, sometimes I have a hard time differentiating between the two. You know, where does creation start? Where does it stop? Sebastian, ignoring the questions, asked, Where did you study, Jesus? Jesus took a drink of his water that the boy had brought. My father is a master, the master, if you ask me. He's been painting as long as I can remember. Every one of his paintings is a bona fide masterpiece. I'm not just saying that either. It's the truth. The greatest artist to ever live. Sebastian observed. High praise. And where would I see one of his paintings? Oh, you won't. He's never sold one. But Jesus looked toward the ceiling as if lost in thought for a moment. My Father's creations are all around us, everywhere you look, walking, breathing, living masterpieces. But his paintings are his children, far too precious to sell. Come on now, Jesus, he said with a hint of condescension. You and I both know that everything is for sale. The boy placed our salads in front of us and stood at the ready, waiting for Sebastian's cue. Jesus took a bite while Sebastian went on. I own whatever my eye lands on, whatever I desire. This club, my Bentley, that boy. Hell, I think I might be able to purchase you if I truly wanted to, he laughed, disarmingly, and filled his fork with greens. Jesus wiped the corners of his mouth with his napkin. Setting his fork down, he said, when you put a price on anyone, you devalue everyone. When you purchased this boy, you yourself became affordable, cheap. Jesus looked at the boy. This time the boy smiled visibly. Jesus continued, has he ever smiled at you, Sebastian? Sebastian took another bite, ignoring the question. I've been here for 15 minutes and I already own a bigger piece of this boy than you do. You may have purchased his flesh and blood, but I am holding a growing sliver of his heart with each passing minute. I don't want his heart. I want his service, shot back Sebastian. Then he gathered himself and changed the subject. What is your mission, Jesus? You breeze into town, you collect followers by the thousands. The media falls at your feet, and yet none of us really know what it is that you want. The boy brought us our main course, a stew of sorts mixed with peppers in a red sauce. Iguana, said Sebastian by way of explanation, as he dug in with his fork. Do you know how they stop them from escaping once caught? They cut the tendons on their front legs and use them to tie their legs behind their backs. He went on eating. The woman in the red dress came back and stood behind Sebastian, reaching around, laying her hands on his chest as he ate. Have you met Evangeline? He nodded toward the woman in the red. She smiled at Jesus. She is my forest primeval. He leaned his head back against her breasts. Now, your mission, Jesus, said Sebastian, directing him back to the question. Well, interestingly, my story and yours are going to intersect in a significant way, Sebastian. I intend to use you to help me accomplish my destiny. Sebastian set down his fork. Really? He said, it with a sort of indignant doubt. And what exactly will that look like? I hate to ruin the surprise. I think you will just have to wait and watch to see how things play out. Sebastian did not appreciate this response. I hate to break this to you, Jesus, but I don't think we're on the same team. I'm aware of, Sebastian interrupted him. So the likelihood of me coming alongside you to help you accomplish whatever it is you hope to do, well, when hell freezes over, Jesus. He went on. However, I do have a surprise for you today. He smiled with self-satisfaction. I've taken the liberty to organize a press conference as soon as we've finished our lunch. All the national networks are here, including a good number of those from all continents. There's a good chance that this will be seen around the world. Do you realize what a big deal you are? Or should I say, what a big deal they think you are? Jesus didn't respond. Sebastian continued. I should thank you. I would not have been able to assemble this consortium, not without the Messiah. He finished off the sentence with mocking reverence. The woman in red now bent down and wrapped her arms around his neck from behind. He leaned back, kissed her on the cheek, and said, maybe we should have a little after-dinner drink before we go meet the press. She smiled and left us. Jesus, looking across the table at Sebastian, said, what exactly will we be telling the press? I have no announcements to make. Well, then, they are going to be terribly disappointed. I told them that you were ready to inform the world of your intentions. They have high expectations of this meeting. And if I decide not to talk, to stay silent? Sebastian smirked just a bit. I'm afraid you would look like the fool. For your own sake, I would recommend you cordially answer their questions. After all, if you have nothing to hide, this will be a wonderful opportunity for you to tell the world why you are here. The woman arrived back at our table with a silver tray covered by a dome inlaid with jewels. 2 empty shot glasses and a knife were off to one side. She set it on the table, and Sebastian almost imperceptibly licked his lower lip. The dome moved slightly. Something was moving the dome from underneath. The girl reached and pulled the dome from the tray. A live, very young cobra snake was writhing underneath, its head immobilized by a hook that confined it to the tray. The tail was now threatening to knock over our water glasses. Sebastian placed his hand in front of the snake, just out of reach. The fangs flashed in an attempt to sink into Sebastian's hand. The boy, still standing beside our table, now took the knife that was on the tray and grabbed the tail with his left hand and pulled it taut. Then he carefully made an incision with the point of the knife along the middle of the snake's belly. He then reached through the incision, finding the cobra's heart, and pulled it out, placing it in Sebastian's shot glass. He had obviously done this before. Evangeline smiled and stroked Sebastian's hair. The boy went about his business mechanically with a rehearsed proficiency. Next, he severed the head of the cobra, set down the knife, and held the snake's body over Sebastian's glass, lightly squeezing as the blood dripped into it. Then he drained some blood into the other shot glass for Jesus. When he was finished, he stood back with his hands at his sides as blood dripped from his fingertips. His face told no stories, just a dead, cold, emotionless stare. Sebastian leaned forward, looking into his glass. The heart was still beating, creating ripples in the liquid. I don't mean to be selfish, Jesus, still admiring the efforts of the heart. But today, I get the heart, and you must simply settle for the blood. He picked up his glass, held it up toward Jesus, and with a smile on his face said, "A toast?" Jesus made no move to pick up his glass. "To friendship." He began to bring the glass to his lips, then stopped. "But if not friendship, then to a war where one of us will pay in blood." He threw the shot glass back, heart and all, and swallowed. He set down the glass, then looked off into the distance as if allowing it to settle. Then he said, "My favorite part? Feeling the heart continue to beat in my stomach." For 20 seconds he enjoyed the sensation. Then he raised his eyebrows and pronounced, "Dead."